Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. It's Sunday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having yourselves a wonderful start to your day and a great weekend out there so far. Here to bring you the latest on what's going on with many things in this morning's video. The first thing, of course, we will discuss is what's going on out there in the tropics. This tropical wave of interest that's got all of our attention. How strong could it potentially get? Where is it going to go? It's dubbed 98L, an investigation by the National Hurricane Center, which basically means they have their eyes on it, and we certainly do too. So what we'll do here is we'll go over all the latest information on this wave. We'll talk about what's going on with the system right at this moment out here in the Atlantic. The latest advisory information from the National Hurricane Center. We'll go over all the model guidance from overnight into this morning. We'll discuss the environment out ahead of this storm that could promote this to eventually intensify to not only our next named storm, which is Ernesto, but I think a hurricane, which would be Hurricane Ernesto, and it potentially could become a powerful hurricane. It's just, the question everybody's, wanting to ask is, where is this thing heading? And also, how strong could it potentially get? And we just don't know the exact answer of that, and we probably won't for a while. We really need to focus on the short term of this system and who could it impact, like in the Caribbean islands, like the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, maybe even getting closer to the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos Islands. Does it turn north before it impacts you guys? What about Bermuda? So there's a lot of questions we need to get an answer to, and we will continue to work our way to that answer. And of course, we will talk about steering currents too in this video, kind of explain things in a way where you guys can understand. That'll be a portion of the video where we kind of slow down, draw on this for you guys, and really just explain things and try to nerd out. Try not to nerd out on you guys too much. Don't want to lose anybody. I definitely just want to explain it where you guys can understand. After we do that, of course, we will discuss what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48, like we always do in these morning videos. I got you covered there. Timestamps throughout the entire video. Jump ahead to the portion of the video you want to watch, and they're there for you guys to utilize. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. My voice is definitely off this morning. I don't really feel sick at all. I just kind of have a scratchy throat. Hopefully I'm not going to get sick. So talking a lot, it's probably going to irritate my throat a little bit, but we'll muscle our way through this video, and hopefully this is a fleeting thing. It's not a big deal at all, but if you do notice a difference or you hear me twist up some words, it's just because I'm fighting that a little bit this morning. So with all that being said, let's get rocking and rolling. So once again, we will try to figure out what this wave is, and it's right here, out here in the central Atlantic, beginning to enter more so the western Atlantic now as it gets a little bit closer to the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands, etc. So that is our wave. It looks pretty much the same as it did when we made a video last night. It has the showers and storms associated with it. It just looks like your classic open wave, no defined low-level circulation. If it had that, it would be a tropical depression. This thing's getting kind of blasted somewhat on its eastern side with just some flow that's going from pretty much east to west out here in the Atlantic. The air is not really being dispersed outward in all portions of this video, all sides of this all sides of this tropical wave at this point. So there's not a great upper wind pattern with this. It is on one side, but on the eastern side it is not. So that is why it really has not got its act together overnight, and we really weren't expecting this system to really get its act together overnight. It will continue to somewhat struggle over the next probably 24 to 36 hours. So we got to continue to watch this in the shorter term, because the more it gets its act together in the shorter term, the more higher impacts it will bring to like the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico. So we definitely got to figure that one out. So that's what's going on right now. Still an open wave, and still just a tropical wave at this point. So we continue to move forward here, and we look at the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Let's see if we got a new update. We do. So cool. This thing still has a 90% chance to develop sometime in the next 7 days. So this update literally dropped 9 minutes ago from the National Hurricane Center. So that has not changed. I mean, this pretty much is going to develop to, at minimum, a tropical depression, but a very high probability this will develop into a storm. If you actually read the discussion here, and let's try to see if we can get the most out of this here. Environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development of this system, and a tropical depression is likely to form within the next couple days while the system approaches and then moves near or over the Leeward Islands. So how much does it intensify in the shorter term? That's a big question here. Now, if we do look at what's the chances of it developing within the next 2 days, is now bumped up to that orange, to that red, so a 60 to a 70% chance for this to develop into a tropical depression sometime in the next 2 days. So, I mean, 48 hours. I mean, this thing will probably be dubbed a depression or maybe tropical storm Ernesto. So the chances, the percent chances continue to increase with this without the National Hurricane Center. So we break down all model, guys. The first thing we will discuss is the latest from the GFS from this morning. So we'll initialize this for tomorrow morning. There's a chance this could be a depression by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning and making a video. But we keep this going, and this is the wave right here on your screen. Of course, Leeward Islands here. We got Puerto Rico here. We got Hispaniola here, Turks and Caicos Islands, and the Bahamas. Of course, everybody's watching this, especially in these areas. We take this into Tuesday morning. GFS, not quite as aggressive anymore as it was in yesterday evening's run, where it had a full-fledged tropical storm, a stronger tropical storm kind of riding through the northern Leeward Islands, the British Virgin Islands, etc., up into Puerto Rico. Had a full-fledged hurricane going right into Hispaniola. But it does have a tropical storm here in the next 48 hours staring down the Lesser Antilles. It's a little bit further south initially, and then it kind of begins to jump northwest, makes landfall somewhere in the Leeward Islands. One of the islands here is a tropical storm Ernesto, based off this run of the GFS, which continues to be stronger in the shorter term. And I'll tell you what I mean when I show you all the other model guidance. But 999 millibar low, that's a tropical storm that's starting to affect areas of like the British Virgin Islands Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And kind of slows down in this area, which we definitely don't want to see. Rides over areas of the Virgin Islands. It gets north of them. It does not do what the run did last night, where it kind of goes into this area, into the Caribbean, and makes landfall as a high-end Category 2 hurricane into the Dominican Republic, which is good news. But, of course, these aren't final solutions by these models. We're still trying to figure out the shorter term also, and we got a long way to figure out until we figure out the longer term, which is what we're getting into now. But the GFS has this, turning pretty much northeast at this point. You can actually see a trough pretty well, even just on the precipitation output. You see how you have this area of green right into here? To me, that's clear as day that you have some sort of cold front draping across areas of the eastern U.S. and the North Atlantic. So, I mean, you can see the cold front pretty well. It's right into here. Separation between dry air up here and moist air along that boundary and just south of it. So you already know that's going to influence the steering currents of this at least somewhat. So the GFS, as we're getting into Thursday morning, this is beginning to intensify into a strong hurricane. 971, if you're basing this off millibar, would probably make it a Category 2-ish hurricane or so. But it's not impacting anybody at this point. It's just out in the southwest Atlantic. Turks, Caicos Islands over here, Bahamas over here, so far enough away from you guys where it's not really heavily impacting you guys at all, except, maybe some outer bands, some gusty winds. But this continues to head north, and we get into Friday morning, August the 16th. It's right smack in the middle of the southwest Atlantic, well south of Bermuda, which is right here, and it's a 964 millibar low. So at this point, I would say that this is most likely a major hurricane based off the GFS here. And this continues to head north at this point, and we get into like next Friday evening, guys. I mean, this is like, 5.5 days out. And this makes a very, very close pass to directly making landfall almost into Bermuda. Of course, Bermuda is very small. You need this thing to literally just go right over Bermuda to be a technical landfall, because Bermuda is so small in the grand scheme of things out here in the Atlantic. But it has a 958 millibar major hurricane, Category 3-ish, low-end 4-ish, scraping Bermuda, the actual center of circulation going just east of Bermuda. And then this thing continues to kind of head, and it looks like it almost is heading northeast, and then it jogs back north. And then we'll actually have to go back up here and look at the eastern U.S. And here it is right here. The latest GFS says it's a no-go for the northeast. It looks like it It misses it. It's a definitely wide right, which is a good thing. And then this thing is actually heading up to, and we'll have to, sorry about all the back and forth, guys, to southeast Atlantic Canada. And here it goes. Does it impact anybody up here? Nope. Heads back on out to sea. Steering currents favor it not really heavily impacting anybody except Bermuda. It would heavily impact Bermuda with such a strong hurricane so close. But from everything that I've heard, I've had a lot of people comment on here. Bermuda is a very safe island when it comes to hurricanes. They're built very well, I think, is the way people put it, and they can really handle this type of stuff. But of course, if a high-end hurricane makes a direct impact and you're getting blasted by an eye wall, it doesn't matter how prepared you are for this, for that kind of thing. It could bring devastating impacts. So we just got to watch this. Now we look at the European. The thing with the European is it's weaker in the shorter term. So I mean, we get in a Monday afternoon. This is still an open wave. This blob of green right here, that is the tropical wave of interest that we're talking about, and it takes all the way into Tuesday morning for the L to even pop up on your screen here. So, I mean, we basically just have a wave or a tropical depression just kind of cruising over the Leeward Islands. I mean, bringing some gusty showers and storms, nothing devastating by any means. And there's that front diving in, same feature you just saw in the GFS. And this continues to just kind of meander in this area, bringing some showers and storms to the British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, but never really develops. It takes it getting north of the Caribbean as it sneaks north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola before it really starts to deepen. As you can tell, that number begins to drop from 1,010 to 1,003 millibars next Wednesday evening. Well, this Wednesday evening, you can say, since we're at the start of the week. And then that number steadily drops. It definitely does not intensify as fast in the shorter to medium term as the GFS does. 992 millibar low. And then by the time we're into Friday morning, this coming Friday morning, August the 16th, this is an all-out hurricane, but not as strong at this point as the GFS says it would be. So this is a 984 millibar low, but you notice it's turning north too. So, all of our friends and family here in the southeast, the Bahamas, Cuba, will say, breathe a breath of fresh air knowing that this is turning. And Model Guys continues to suggest this. Now, we don't want to ignore the possibility of this somehow missing the trough and getting closer to the southeast. I'm not saying that. I think Florence is a really good example of, a storm that we really thought was going out to sea. And then I think my friends here in the Carolinas knows what happened with that storm in 2018. Without even explaining it any further, ended up kind of drifting and stalling and dumping catastrophic rainfall totals across the Carolinas. But, we continue on the Euro here. The unfortunate thing here is the Euro and the GFS both like the idea of being almost in the exact same position right on top of Bermuda just about. Of course, the direct landfall, who knows? Bermuda's very tiny. But Saturday evening, this is bringing big-time impacts to Bermuda. Has a very small, compact hurricane impacting you guys. 971, we're probably making a Category 2-ish hurricane or so. So not as strong as the GFS, but still a strong hurricane. And then we'll do exactly what we did with the GFS and take a wider look, eastern U.S. Here it is, missing the eastern U.S., thank goodness, and it's heading off to the north. Now, does it impact Atlantic Canada any? Newfoundland, our friends up here, Nova Scotia, look at this here, and here it comes. No, misses it. The far northern edge of the system does, get into southeastern Newfoundland, but no huge impacts. So good news pretty much across the board. I mean, bad news, if this turns sooner, then it's probably going to have a higher chance to maybe flirt with an impact with Bermuda. But I would say that we're waking up to a little bit better news, better trends with model guidance. But of course, we know that this could flip on a dime. But last thing we'll look at here is the icon. And it does only go out 120 hours. And I will say the icon is further south, which is not what you want to see. It brings a pretty weak tropical system into the southern coastline of Hispaniola. Bring some, rains, maybe flooding rains. There's that feature right here with the cold front diving now. But when does the icon turn? That's a big question. If we go back and look at the OOZ icon, it's a little bit further north than the O6Z, so there's been a kind of a south tick. But this doesn't turn until later in the game. So this would try to bring some impacts to Turks and Caicos Islands, but even you guys, it wouldn't bring big impacts. So it turns a little bit slower and begins to intensify. And this actually jogs just north, a little bit tick of a north-northwest also. And, 1 week from today has a major hurricane between Bermuda and the southeast coastline. So the icon is way west of guidance. I wouldn't say way west, but it is several hundred miles west of model guidance if you compare it with the GFS and the European model. So that's just one thing to note here. Now we continue to move forward here. Once again, I think Weather Nerds is just acting up right now. The site that I like to look at, I think it has the GFS ensemble and the European ensemble a little mixed up. It looks kind of weird. So we're just going to go back to tropical tidbits here. And once again, you see this clustering up of these numbers here. I know this is probably hard to see on your screen. And you see the bright yellow kind of bunched up right into here. That is where our system could potentially be Tuesday morning. So this is the EPS, the European Ensemble. Makes up 51 members and puts all members on a screen on output for you guys. It does not obviously mean we're going to have 40 or 50 hurricanes in one spot. It just basically puts all the members on that ensemble mean and puts them on your screen instead of just creating one mean low pressure, one average low pressure, and putting an L on your screen. I hope that makes sense. So this is moving into the Leeward Islands. Of course, most of these members have it right over the Leeward Islands, affecting the British Virgin Islands. These members begin to intensify somewhat. So, of course, we need to watch in Puerto Rico. We need to watch in Hispaniola. But if you're in Cuba, Jamaica, as of now, this really looks like it's going to turn north, but of course, keep your eyes on it. And then what happens after this? We got some members that, affect the Turks, Caicos Islands. Some members that start to get in the southeast Bahamas that you want to watch. So, this begins to somewhat spread out a little bit right into here, which is huge, with interest in Bermuda and the Bahamas. You got some members that, certainly over here, and then some that are over here. And of course, the members right in the middle is pretty much your mean of where this low could potentially be. So you keep this going, and you still got, a good bit of members that, are way over here. All right. But you got a good bit of members that are over here too. So I wouldn't say, be super concerned in the southeast coastline. I would say you need to watch these further west members if you live a little bit further up the eastern coastline, especially in the northeast. Now, this is not Mitch saying I'm completely ruling out a landfall into the southeast coastline. I'm just telling you guys, in my personal opinion, the areas you need to watch out for the most in the longer term. So let's keep this going. And, all these members continue to move north. You got a few stragglers that are trying to get a little bit closer to the eastern U.S. And then you move this on up the road a little bit into the North Atlantic. And here's a few of these members trying to hang out a little bit longer, getting pulled by that trough that we keep talking about, the upper low that'll be hanging and fully cut off by this blocking feature up to the north that could potentially yank this system and some of these members, back north and towards maybe the New England coastline. I mean, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. But, a lot of these members, escape out to sea, but we got to watch Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island, etc. So, this is kind of the spread right now. Even some members trying to get, way, way close to the eastern U.S. So you still got a spread here. Still got a spread. Definitely no clustering up of members in the long term, which we typically don't expect that kind of stuff. Now we're talking about the environment conditions out ahead of this system. Of course, this is in Celsius, so if you're not familiar with converting Celsius to Fahrenheit, I mean, I can't do the exact degree off the top of my head. I just kind of give you a range, but 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, about 29, which is kind of the area that you're seeing the most that this tropical system will probably cruise over. Like, it's probably going to come up through here somewhere south or north of that arrow. So in general, you got sea surface temperatures on average, 29 to 30 degrees Celsius. So that's about mid to upper 80s when you convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So go on and check that off the box as an ingredient that's going to support and maintain shower and storm development in this tropical system. It basically is going to allow these tropical systems to ingest that warm, moist air off the surface of the latent heat, basically off the surface of the ocean. And this helps to really develop a core for these systems of showers and storms which then protects that low level circulation and allows for this to really thrive and develop. So, you mix that with the fact that we do have a favorable upper wind pattern that we're about to show you here in a second. But this continues to deal with very warm waters as it kind of goes off this way, maybe this way, or maybe a little bit closer to the eastern U.S. Regardless, a lot of warm waters out here in the Southwest Atlantic for this thing to work with. And now we're talking about the upper wind pattern. The reason this thing's kind of struggling and right now in the shorter term it's not really developing is because these are winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, okay, about 35 to 40,000 feet up in the air, 200 millibars. So if you notice, this system is right here, okay? So you see these lines with these sort of, almost looks like arrowheads kind of embedded into the lines. This is the direction the winds are going in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So it's kind of cruising like this, hitting the system in the upper levels, and then going like this. So air is actually being dispersed outward, which these tropical systems like. It allows for more air to rise on the west side of the system. But on the east side, it's kind of getting blasted and being affected by some easterly shears because you just have pretty much an east to west flow out here, which is kind of what's steering this system from east to west. But it is getting impacted by some easterly shear, and you can actually see it pretty well. I can actually pull it up on the fly here and let's see, and show you guys what that looks like when you compare what we're seeing with that with actual real-time observation here. And we're actually going to look at the water vapor loop. So whiter colors indicate more moisture in the atmosphere. You can actually see how all this is kind of moving this way and east to west here. So if you look at this convection that you see right here, the pop-ups in white, you see how it'll kind of explode and then kind of drift off that way. It'll explode right here and then drift off that way. Well, I would say the axis of where the middle of this system is probably somewhere into here. So if you notice, not as much white colors here. It's more so on this side of the system where air is being dispersed this way. So this is getting hit on the eastern side of the system by that shear, which is allowing probably for a little bit of dry air to get into the system. And in the shorter term, as of right now, it's not just able to really get itself together. We expect the environment to shift over the next 48 hours, which is why the chances of this developing over the next 48 hours has increased. And if we go back and look at this, watch how this entire area kind of shifts here. System gets right here, and all of a sudden this coming Tuesday evening looks a little different now. Okay, now our system's right here, which is spinning cyclonically, which means it's rotating like this. If you notice in these lines and these arrows, they're pointing out away from the storm in the opposite direction and dispersing out like this. And you see how this area down here in the Eastern Caribbean is fanning out like this. It's going out like this. So what does that mean? Well, you no longer have a directional flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere that's blasting the east side of the storm. And of course, on the western side of the storm, air is still being dispersed outward. And even on the northern to southern side of the storm, it also is too. So now this is entering an environment in the upper levels of the atmosphere right when it starts to get into the Leeward Islands area, where air is being dispersed away from the center of the storm. That's allowing for more air to rise, and it's just like a constant ventilation cycle for the system. And of course, rising air, that means it supports shower and storm development and the maintaining of that shower and storm development, which tells us that this could develop a very moist atmosphere and really become prime for maybe at least moderately intensifying, potentially rapidly intensifying. So if you continue this pattern and see if it's there once it gets a little bit on down the road, it definitely does. Like, for example, you get right here. And I buy looking at this when it comes to shear over other things. So some people will look at other things. I love looking at the upper wind pattern when it comes to shear. But you notice air is rapidly getting dispersed outward from the storm. I mean, and at this point, this has one heck of what we call a ULAC. It's a weather acronym, stands for Upper Level Anticyclone. So that is why you see how that millibar drops from like 1,000 and something millibars to 976, a rapid deepening, rapid intensification, is possible in that 2-day span. That is because this really enters a prime environment, really warm sea surface temperatures, a favorable upper wind pattern, a divergence aloft is another way you can call it, a little fancy term, and has a nice fanning outflow. So this definitely enters, and I think that if this thing is going to become a major hurricane, we're going to be really breaking it down probably sometime late this work week into this weekend, and I think it could really become prime in this area as air is being dispersed outward from the storm in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So hope that makes sense. We continue to move forward here. Hopefully my voice can hang on tight for this portion of the video, which is really important. But what we're looking at here is 500 millibar steering pattern in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So the orange you see on your screen, that's higher pressure. The blue is lower pressure. Flow works around both of these features differently in the northern hemisphere. And it really helps to steer our tropical systems one way or the other. Now we'll note, as we're going to start this around Tuesday, August the 13th. So as you know, and if you don't, I'll tell you, our actual tropical system is a low pressure itself, which is right here. You see the blob of blue? That is future Ernesto. Now you notice, there's no blue, there's no orange really close by to this system. You got it over here, you got it over here, you got it right here. So there's nothing really pushing this system one way or the other as far as an upper level feature. So the system's kind of steering its own self. It's basically got its own wheel here and creates its own steering path. The stronger these systems get, the more they can do that. And the stronger a low pressure gets, the more poleward it wants to get, the more it wants to gain latitude. To sum that up, the more further north it wants to go. So you're going to notice when I get this back in motion, this is going to begin to turn north like this. I'll get this back off and keep this going. It sees that weakness, this white area. It's a weakness for it to easily turn north. Now, no issue about that. And here it goes. Look, it's turning north right here. Now it gets right here. You see this blob of blue right in here? That is a cutoff low, a pretty large cutoff low too, or an upper low. Let's just call it a cutoff low. So the flow around this is going just like this. Just like the flow around our tropical system, Ernesto, is going just like this. Same thing, right? So this feature is already, our tropical system is already feeling the flow around the base of this upper low. So it's already going to try to start to maybe head north-northeast. North-northeast. Don't want to get my directions mixed up. I almost want to say north-northwest. So it's already going to start to feel the flow and get yanked a little bit back to the east. Okay, at the same time, we got this ridge out here, and the flow around this ridge is going like this. So this is going to try to find an avenue to go on escape. But as we know, the pattern is always evolving. It's never really quite staying the same. So you keep this going, and there it is. There's that trough sort of latching onto our tropical system. It pulls on it. But on the latest GFS, which is something the GFS wasn't showing yesterday evening, the trough really weakens here and almost absorbs it. They absorb one another. They kind of combined. And no, this isn't necessarily going to create some sort of superstorm or anything like that, but it happens. And at this point, instead of this strong influence of this upper low really yanking this system further north, on this particular run of the GFS, it no longer really influences its pattern too much. And this thing has so much forward speed that it's pretty much heading north. Now, there is a chance that a little bit of some flow around this ridging feature right here could really work on the system and prevent it from just flat out escaping on out. But at the same time, one thing I'm noticing here is a little upper feature right here. You see this white area in the ridge. This could actually create an opening for this to really escape, because at this point, this is a powerful hurricane well north of Bermuda. So it's really going to take a big time influence in the upper steering currents to really yank this one way or the other at this point. Now we stop it here. You see this huge upper trough digging down on the latest GFS run a little over a week from today. If these two trend a little bit closer to one another, for example, if this trough trends a little bit quicker, then it could latch onto this. For example, if our tropical system's right here and this trough might be a little bit closer, this would try to yank on this a little bit more. So I do want to watch this secondary trough that digs down in the central and eastern U.S. And model guidance over the next few days. But regardless, even though there's a blocking feature up here, this system is pretty much at this point riding around this ridge and heading on off. Okay, we do need to watch the strength of this ridge. If this can actually yank this a little bit further, we'll basically prevent it from just going full-fledged northeast and maybe just north, which would carry it into Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So hope that makes sense. Just to kind of sum that up, the fact that the reason why this is turning north is because we pretty much just don't have all this, orange area right here, ridging of high pressure over this area. If you had it over this area, this will continue to head on off and threaten a lot more people. But instead, we have a trough, which creates a weakness in the pattern. And of course, the current around that's going like this. So this creates a steering and kind of a pull that might support this to head on out to sea. But we got to watch a lot of things that could evolve over the U.S. and model guidance over the next several days, because we got a long ways before we fully figure out what this is going to do. So I thank y'all for helping me get through that. I'm sorry for clearing a throat and all that, horrible stuff. Just this video is definitely a little bit of a struggle just for my throat here. But as far as what's happening across the U.S. right now, we do have a flooding setup that's ongoing in Oklahoma. We have flash flood warnings. We have a lot of heavy rain falling over Oklahoma City right now. So that's probably the most impactful weather right now. Across the U.S., a lot of heavy rain in Oklahoma. If you look really closely, guys, you're starting to see a little bit of snow. Not sure if that's actually falling as snow, but it's certainly interesting for sure. So that's what's going on across the U.S. So we continue to move forward here. Look at watches, warnings, and advisories. Overall, it doesn't look like a highly active day at all. Flood watches up for the Eastern Carolinas. Heat advisories still up for areas of the low country of South Carolina, South Georgia, northern areas of Florida, southern sections of Florida, heat advisories. So some flood watches up in Utah. Outside of that, guys, it's not a super active weather day at all. It's been, decently quiet across the lower 48 over the last several days. But there is a couple areas we need to watch out for flash flooding. One in Utah and northern areas of Arizona. And then we need to watch out for flooding in areas of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and areas of southeastern Kansas. And then once again, with this stalled out frontal boundary, we definitely need to watch out for excessive rainfall for those areas. Of course, those areas have already picked up a ton of rain from Debbie. So once again today, we're going to deal with a lot of rainfall with any storms that do form in the Eastern Carolinas. So if you live in that yellow area, that means you have a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles at any given point. Severe weather today. If you live in the light green, that's just a general risk of thunderstorms. The dark green, level 1 out of 5, marginal risk. And this is just for some gusty winds and some marginal hail. So not a huge deal. But you never know when your house is going to get hit by a really bad storm. So I do want to mention the glorious temperatures for mid-August standards in the Deep South as we break down the Southeast. Areas of the Cumberland Plateau are waking up to like the 50s. Deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, you got some temperatures that are sub 70 degrees with some lower humidity. So it's very nice, very pleasant. Unfortunately, this has not made it east of the Appalachian Mountains in my neck of the woods. So we're waking up to just your typical summer type morning. But even just looking a little bit to the northeast here, I mean, this is nice conditions. But once again, I hope this isn't a sign of things to come from my friends here east of the Alps and the Carolinas. But, we got, once again, another cold front stalling out. They just love to do this for whatever reason these days. Stalling out. And the actual cold front is probably more so into here. But as far as the dry air that's lagging behind it, it can't get over the higher elevations of the eastern Appalachian Mountains to save its life for whatever reason. So it's definitely a warm summer type morning here in the Carolinas and Georgia, but of course it's nice, it's pleasant west of the Alps where cold fronts love to die for whatever reason. So we keep this going here though. As far as what's going to fall out there across the southeast, we do have that shot at isolated showers and storms across Florida. Widespread storms across the eastern Carolinas are possible. Flooding risk is going to be there as a piece of energy kind of rides the boundary of this cold front, a little short wave So this will kind of re-energize the atmosphere for some showers and storms in the eastern Carolinas. So please be aware of flooding with this. A little bit closer look at you guys here. As we move forward, we get to midday. These storms could fire up just after lunchtime, and Charleston, the Myrtle Beach, Beaufort, all the way into the eastern sections of North Carolina. And we will watch some storms that will fire up a little bit more inland into the Carolinas. And we could get some storms into upstate South Carolina. It could drift into the Midlands of South Carolina. A little bit of storm action is possible into the Piedmont. Charlotte could get some action later tonight. Could be waking up to some storms along the South Carolina, North Carolina border as we're waking up tomorrow morning. The Northeast, it's a pretty nice weather day. We will have some energy that will swing out of Quebec and Ontario. This will bring some storms that are possible in northern PA, across the Finger Lakes, the southern tier, the Adirondacks, Tokyo Plateau. This energy eventually this evening will start to get into Vermont, maybe a storm all the way down to western Mass, a little bit of shower activity up into Maine. And then maybe some more energy will kind of surge through as we're waking up tomorrow morning across New York State. Outside of that, it's not very active today. Of course, we're dealing with the storms this morning in Oklahoma. That energy will trail off into Arkansas. We'll see how much it holds together. And then we'll take it to this evening. Not a whole lot going on. You do want to watch a couple storms here in southeastern Colorado. And then we make it into tomorrow morning. Once again, we're going to wake up to a big old complex of showers and storms and heavy rain up in Missouri. But so, kind of the same area, but a little bit further northeast in an entire different state. Could be waking up to a similar scenario that you guys are dealing with in Oklahoma, but in Arkansas and northern Arkansas and Missouri tomorrow morning, we could be waking up to a very rainy, stormy start. So the north central U.S., the immediate Midwest, and in the Great Lakes region, pretty quiet. But we get into Dakotas. If you live in central South Dakota into northern Nebraska, we could get some powerful storms later on this evening. So please be aware of these storms if you live in this area. They'll start in the western sections of South Dakota, maybe even the extreme southeastern areas of North Dakota, southwestern areas of North Dakota. And then they could be very intense later this evening. So please be aware of this in this area for these storms that will be getting going. My mic is trying to move on me here. But all this energy will eventually kind of move downstream into western Iowa, and then that'll be the same energy that we'll deal with tomorrow morning in Missouri. The storms that will start in the northern plains will eventually get into Missouri by tomorrow morning. Now, the western U.S., we're going to get widespread storms across the Four Corners region. Could even get some storms just east of San Diego down there in southern Cal. But look at all this activity. We could even have a little bit of a flooding risk, which we do have that slight risk of flooding in areas of Utah and Arizona. But, if you live in this corridor right here, from Utah to Colorado, northern Arizona, a lot of shower and storm activity in this region today. Widespread storms in this area. Some could pack a punch, flooding risk, and then we'll wake up tomorrow morning and things are much calmer. So we look at temperatures. I'll let you take a look at this. 70s up in the upper Midwest region, the Great Lakes, 60s and 70s, a nice early fall-like day in the Northeast. It's warmer in the deep South and the Southeast, but even, you guys in the Mid-South, only 80s, lower humidity. Of course, Texas, it's not escaping the very hot temperatures, 90s and 100s. It's not too bad in the upper portion of the country. It's not too bad out west either. No real big-time heat anywhere. We do have some heat advisories, but nothing too extreme at all. So thank you guys for helping me get through this video. This was a rough one. Might take a break this evening just to let my voice calm down, unless I just feel dramatically better, and I could. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful Sunday, and I'll talk to you again soon.